before I got there, I never really felt welcome. It felt very foreign to me, and quite out of my reach, to be honest. And I think a lot of that was because I'd seen those buildings on TV, I'd seen them in postcards, and they were just so famous. And at that time, when I first got there to look around, I didn't really back myself as much as I do now.
This is the Oxford and Cambridge project. I'm Opportune Simon.
And I'm Cleopatra Cipriano.
And today we have Joe Binder with us. Joe is currently CEO and founder of WOW, a personal branding agency. He graduated from Fitzwilliam College in 2017 with a bachelor's degree in geography. And he grew up in London and in school never even dreamt about applying to Cambridge.
During his time at the university, Joe founded Students Of, an international media project documenting the lives of students in 15 different universities around the world. He also created a YouTube channel documenting his life, which gained over 22,000 subscribers. Joe is dedicated to improving young people's transition between school and the workplace by personally mentoring sixth form students since graduating. Hi, Joe. It's good to have you here with us today.
Hello. What a fantastic introduction. Thanks so much for that.
Well, it's only reflective of what you've achieved and what you've done in life. So thank you for doing all of this. And obviously, we'll be linking your YouTube channel below so that everyone can go have a look at your time at Cambridge and all your vlogs. But obviously, we'll be really happy to talk to you about just everything in this episode as well. So, Joe, I feel like we should start by your time at school. And just how you managed to getting on the process of applying to Cambridge, because you said that obviously when you were in school you didn't even think that you would do it.
Yeah, so I guess the application process to Cambridge for me really starts back in year 8 when I must have been, 12. So I was placed in bottom sets in a school where there were 300 people in each year group, and ultimately, the banter between me and my friends was that I was the thick one. I was the dumb kid in 3B, which was, the name for set 6. And that was always kind of what people would say to me. And I realised after a while that I could definitely do better. I could work way harder. And once I actually started putting in the work and getting better grades, I kind of got a bit obsessed with seeing that process. And I basically made it my mission to make sure that future Joe would have as many opportunities as possible and as many doors open as possible based on the work that current Joe was doing. And that kind of became my life. So I would work my arse off for every single exam, for every mock test, whatever it was, I was going the extra mile. And quickly, over the next few years, I would start to move up in sets. And start to be given harder work and be challenged more. And then by the time it got to applying to Cambridge, we actually had an Oxford and Cambridge group, which I was like, there's no way I'm joining that group, because it's a pretty big thing to put yourself forward, to say to your friends publicly that I'm going to join the Cambridge and Oxford group so I could get, help to apply to those universities. And so I didn't join originally. Some of my friends did, and I kind of just sat back and slightly envied them. And then eventually, through a lot of conversations with my geography teacher, Miss Ruzi, where she was, looking me dead in the eyes and saying, you are smart enough. There are different types of intelligence. Don't listen to other people. You should definitely join the group and apply. I joined the group. And then shortly after, ended up leaving the group because I embarrassed myself in front of everyone by trying to answer a question related to, Cambridge and geography at Cambridge. And then circled, did a U-turn, thought, you know what, I'm the one who's actually going to take the interview. I'm going to believe in myself. I'm going to absolutely smash it. And so I joined the group, applied to Cambridge, got in, and ended up going to Cambridge at Fitzwilliam College.
That's awesome, honestly, and it's so inspiring. And we know how hard it is to sometimes put yourself out there, especially when you feel like you haven't always been the smartest kid in the room, and to say, actually, you know what, I do want to try harder, and I do want to defeat the stereotypes, and I will try to make it where I want to be. So it's really nice to hear of your sort of transition. And I'm just wondering, was there anything that inspired that, or was it just a realization of, if I work harder, I will do better?
I think so. It's really weird because there's one moment that kind of springs to mind when you say that, and it must have been around, in early year 8 when our science teacher, I think it was Dr. Gilbert, was handing our assessments back to us, our tests back to us, and I think the grades must have been out of 30 for that test, and each of us would walk up to his desk at the front of the classroom. And when he gave me mine, I think it said 24 out of 30. And he said to me, that's, this is 3A level rather than 3B level, as in you should be in the set above. And I think once I heard that from him and I saw the grade and I was like, oh my God, I got 24 out of 30, where it's typically I'll be getting like 13 out of 30 or 14 out of 30. I was like, this feels really good. I like this feeling. And then when I took a step back and realized that feeling came because I worked really hard for that and, did extra homework and extra revision. I think that was definitely a key pivotal moment for me within that. And I think anyone would be able to resonate with the fact that once you put in hours for something and it pays off, that feeling is kind of contagious and you just get a bit obsessed. And I think that's what happened with me.
There's definitely multiple kinds of smartness and multiple ways of working that can get you really far in life. So then could you talk to us about your application process then? When you started getting that confidence, you started prepping for interviews, was it then mostly with the group, or did you say that you then kind of strayed away from the group and did it by yourself, or how did that go?
So I left the Oxford and Cambridge kind of training group, if we could call it that. I don't think it was particularly intense. There were just a few sessions to say you need to be applying earlier than other universities. You need to make sure this kind of thing is on your personal statement, etc. So it was nothing crazy in terms of prep, but I left that. I think I had a conversation with the careers teacher, who I've got a feeling they said it's not to do it, but obviously I can't remember exactly what that was, but basically ended up applying. And I remember getting to Cambridge with my mum, and we parked outside this pub, and as soon as we got out of the car, we just looked at each other. Something felt different, because we're used to being in busy London where everybody's stressed the whole time, everybody's in a rush. It just felt so calm, and that immediately was like a nice feeling. And then in the cab journey from the pub to Fitzwilliam College, I was having an amazing conversation with the cab driver, who said that he came from Poland, and that was a big part of one of our units about Polish migration and things like that. So I was having a really nice conversation there. That almost felt like prep, and I had rehearsed so many different things that I wanted to say in that interview. And in the first one, I was just completely thrown off guard and didn't feel like I did a good job. And I remember calling my mum after and said, look, first of the 2 interviews is now done. I don't think I did as well as I could have done. So I'm gonna absolutely smash it in this next one. I'm not holding anything back. And I remember her being like, cool, good at, go get them. And in the second interview, I just went in with the most positive outlook possible. And I was, myself, I was enthusiastic, I was positive, and I was able to show just how passionate I was about studying geography, and also just how passionate I was about studying geography at Cambridge. And I think it's likely that first interview could have been a big no for me, but that second one would have been like, okay, hold on a minute. This guy has the grades. He's got the predicted grades. He's got a decent personal statement, but he is seriously passionate. And this is a type of person where he may not be as technically good as some of the other applicants, but he's going to work. And I don't know for certain, but I would assume that, if anything, was what got me through that interview and what got me a place at Fitzwilliam College.
It's impossible not to smile because I feel like we could have definitely crossed paths at that day, because I also applied at Fitzwilliam, and obviously maybe the interviews weren't on the same day precisely, but I just remember having my mother there with me, and between the two rounds of interview, I just remember being really excited and thinking that the first one had gone, not too badly, and running to the bar and saying like, I think it's going okay, like see you in a bit, and I just run off to my second one. So yeah, it's just really bringing back happy memories. And what made you apply to Fitzwilliam College then?
So I was just generally quite insecure, had a big inferiority complex, thought that everyone was better than me. And I think there are two main reasons. One is Fitzwilliam College had the most geographers at the time. I think they were taking 10, whereas other colleges were taking 5 or 4. And even though we were advised not to base our applications on that because it didn't matter, and the way that applications work to Cambridge is if you don't get into one specific college, you can be put into a wider pool and then picked out by other colleges to study there. Even, regardless of that, I thought, okay, Fitzwilliam, lots of geographers, that could be wicked, and I can have people to actually support me there if I do get in. And then the other thing, which I think is probably the main reason, is as I was walking around St John's and King's and Christ, the typical Cambridge colleges with the really old, famous architecture, I just felt, this is too much for me. I feel nervous just being here. It doesn't feel like me. Whereas when I got to Fitz, I was like, oh, okay, well, this is down to earth. The buildings, weren't built 600 or 800 years ago. This feels more like something I can achieve, which is interesting. I don't know if that's the right thought process that somebody should have, but just to be completely transparent, that's how I felt at the time. I felt it was down to earth. I'd also read a lot about colleges online, and Fitzwilliam was one of the friendliest colleges and the most down-to-earth colleges. So I think those two factors made me apply to Fitz.
No, I think that's right. I think you do need to find the college that sort of fits your character and your interests, and often a good way to do that is by walking around and seeing the different colleges and just seeing where does it sort of feel like home. So I think that was the right approach for you, and it seemed to have worked out. So well done. But I just wanted to touch on something you said before as well about the interviews and the importance of your attitude and your mental state at the time. So you said even though you didn't do that well in the first one, you still had the confidence to say, you know what, I'm going to go in and smash it for the second one. And I think that's so important for anyone like applying or interviewing to have that confidence, even if there are some questions that throw you off and it doesn't go too well, to just hang in there and, just keep answering to the best of your ability. So
yeah, it's like a driving test. Like you never know until you park the car, until the moment it's over, that you failed it. You could, if you just continue and keep a good positive mindset, like you can just pass it. So you can't give up midway.
I agree with both of those things, and speaking about this makes me remember, first of all, the night before, I think we knew that we were going to get the letters if we were successful on the 4th of January or 4th of December, something like that, and I was on a night out the night before. I was like, you know what, I'm going to go out, I'm going to enjoy myself and just try to take my mind off this. And then the next morning I was just waiting by the front door, looking out the window, waiting for the postman, and eventually I saw him. And I saw him go from door to door and eventually work his way up to my house. And as soon as he walked towards our door, I opened the door, said hi, and then grabbed everything out of his hands. I was like, thanks, closed the door, ran into my living room, slammed the door behind me, dropped through everything else that wasn't Cambridge, saw this big envelope, and I was like, oh my God. And then I started to open it, and I pulled out the letter, and the first thing I saw was, "We are delighted to." And that was it. I was like, oh my God. And that kind of voice that sounds really weird there was similar to how it sounded back then. And then I literally just looked at it to make sure it was legit, and I was like, geez. And I ran upstairs, screamed out to my mum. I was like, I got in. Like, I couldn't believe it. That was like one of the best moments for me. It was just an insane feeling. I couldn't believe it. Was, proud of myself, and just thought back to all of the work that I'd put in, and going from bottom sets and having people take the piss out of me because I wasn't smart enough, to then getting accepted into one of the best universities in the world. I was just like, geez, this is a big moment. This is a pivotal moment. And look, there we go. That's another bit of validation and confirmation that if you put in the hours and you really work your ass off for something, it's going to pay off.
What a moment. Yeah, that's amazing. And like thinking back to all the work you had done and actually managing to achieve your dream, that must have been awesome. And I know we've both been through it, so we sort of know the feeling of accomplishing something so big. So that's amazing. But also, coming when you were at a younger age, thinking that this is not for you, you never dreamt of applying to Cambridge, and then proving mostly to yourself, but also like people around you, that actually you are capable. That must have felt really, really great.
So do you remember your then first few weeks when you arrived to Cambridge? How did that go? Because obviously Fitz has a different vibe. So did you feel at home straight away, or did you have to adapt to anything?
Absolutely hated it when I got there. I was not having a fun time at all. I'd gone from a school and a community where everyone knows everyone. There's a lot of gossip, so you hear people's names often and you just know who people are and people know who you are, to a place where I knew, one or two people, and it just felt really strange. And I feel like I've never really experienced that before, because even when I got to my secondary school, JFS, my brother was 3 years older than me and he was still at the school. So there were some people I knew from my primary school, and then I also had my brother there, and I would always have his friends, the older cool kids, coming up to me and say, hey, you're Ben's brother. So going to school for the first time didn't feel like that much of a big deal. But once I got to uni, it was just completely different. I felt out of my depth. I felt alone. And I remember walking into one of the freshers' house parties and getting there and just looking around and thinking, I literally know nobody here. And at that point in freshers, like anybody listening, will understand and probably resonate with, it's that point where you're trying to make friends with everyone. And, it's not even a case of who's going to be my best friend. It's just, I want to be friends. I want to have friends. And I personally hate, laughing at somebody's jokes if they're terrible jokes. I personally hate being that guy who sits around in a big circle, and congratulates each other for just things that aren't worth it. I much prefer having individual friends than being part of a group for the sake of it. And what I found was that that's probably quite different to a lot of people. So people were starting to form their cliques a few weeks in, and I just didn't feel like I fit into any of them. And I actually had a conversation with somebody in one of these cliques at one point, and I was like, I just feel like I have no friends here. And I've got no actual group. And they said, yeah, but the thing is, you'd be welcome in our group, you'd be welcome in that group, you'd be welcome in that group, but you've got to spend time with these people. You've got to do it. And it's just, I think that was just another, and this is slightly separate to uni, but just a general point. I've always, I've had, friendship groups, but my real friendships have always been one-to-ones, with people, from completely different areas of my life, different schools, different, in some cases, upbringings. I just like people, and I don't like having to like people to then spend time with the people that I really like. So that was something I found really difficult. I couldn't find a group. I never really found a group, to be honest, at Cambridge. And yeah, in the first few weeks, first couple of months, it was just horrible. I just hated it.
Yeah, I get a feeling that we were quite in a similar boat. I was just very lost and lost about the whole being in the UK thing as well. Like, I just didn't even know what winter was.
I'm pretty sure you didn't own a coat or something.
I did not own a coat until January. I own a jacket, and then I wondered how people walked around in the cold. But anyway, so yeah, I felt really out of place. Because my best friend ended up being in different corridors. At the start of Freshers Week, you really want to be friends with people who are closest to you, who might live next door, but they might not share the same interests as you. So yeah, I feel like it can be a really lonely time when people expect freshers to be like the littest time in your life. So that's really interesting. And how, obviously, like, where did you start making friends? Was it with people in your degree that you could speak to individually in lectures, or was it more in your college or extracurriculars?
It's a good question. So I think after a few weeks, there was a point where I was just really down. I was probably writing in my diary. Yeah, I was actually writing in my diary at the time. I've written in a diary for years now. And I just thought, you know what? I'm just not being myself right now because I'm just, worried about all these other things. So, from this point onwards, I'm going to be the, who I actually am, which is speaking to, just starting random conversations with everyone and, to a lot of people, saying things which would make me look like a bit of a weirdo. Like even at work now, I'll walk into our shared office space, I'll see somebody making coffee, I'll go up to them and say, "Are you having the best day ever?" And they'll look at me like, who is this kid and why is he asking me if I'm having the best day? It's just a bit of a weird thing to say, rather than, "Hi, how are you? I'm Joe." But just things like that, I was just like, I'm just going to be me, chilled. And then eventually through that, some people at college, some people in geography, and then through other, friends of friends that I would then meet, then I started forming those kind of individual friendships, which I still have to this day.
Back in secondary school, what was it that made you want to pursue that?
Yeah, so geography I just always found it interesting. Revising for geography exams for me was never ever a chore. And I also liked how, you could point at anything in the world and say, okay, that's geography. And you could say, okay, well, how is that geography? Well, the pillow or a photo frame, everything within that has a story. It comes from somewhere. There's an economics in getting that product over to where it is now. There's a politics to how that product was created and built. There are so many different chains which connect every single thing that we do, every single thing that we look at. And I was really interested in that. And when I was at school, I was obsessed with geography and I was also obsessed with French. And so for me, it was a choice between, do I study geography or French? And the main reason that I wanted to push forward with geography, it was my favourite subject, but I was also obsessed with French. But then I realised that if I would study French at uni, it would be essentially studying English literature, but in another language. It's all French literature. So, I just loved speaking the language. I loved the opportunities that speaking a second language brings. So I got a bit obsessed with that and realised that that wasn't the course. So at that point I was like, right, come on, geography, full steam ahead.
Cool. And so could you tell us then about what you did in your course? Which are the papers that were your favourite part about the course?
I would say, I think it was in final year, where we learned about, the idea of post-truth politics, where politicians are no longer trusted, and as a result, there is this opportunity for them to really create their own narratives, drive their own stories, which could be completely false, but they're always arched within a wider context of how people feel, rather than actual fact. And that's something we've definitely seen with, the Trump presidency. You can sway audiences into believing certain things just by saying them and by speaking them into existence. That for me was probably my favourite part of the whole course. What I didn't like so much about the course was that it felt like I had to constantly talk about ideas that were created decades ago. And occasionally, I would put more of an emphasis on how something relates to the current rather than, the actual concepts that were, created years and years ago. And there were times where I got marked down for doing that. Now, ultimately, if we're just being real, I got marked down because I wasn't using enough of the key reading. It's that simple. But for me, I just felt like, why are we learning this if we're not applying it to the present? But so obviously I understood, but that was a bit of a frustration for me. And what I perhaps learnt about myself then, or perhaps realise now in hindsight, is that I'm very, very, very bad at following a given structure or framework that somebody has laid out for me, which is interesting because that's exactly what I did at school. I worked my arse off within a framework where you can learn how to learn and you can learn how to pass an exam. If you know that you are ultimately tested through an exam, then, you need to focus on the exam and doing timed papers and practice answering exam style questions, and that should be the focus of your revision, and everything else should then feed into that rather than revising everything and not looking at how you're actually going to be tested. And by the end of it, I'd started a YouTube channel, I'd started my Students of project as well, and I just got obsessed with those things far more than the actual course. I loved at that time being at Cambridge, and I definitely don't want to sound ungrateful because I'm aware that, I've just said I worked my arse off to get there, still worked my ass off, still put in the hours necessary, still got a 2-1, which I was really pleased with. And I was never, I got the grades that I wanted. So yeah, just to round that up, I did not throw it in the bin.
Yeah, it seems like you obviously worked hard to get there, and then once you got there, you actually took advantage of like the plethora of opportunities that were given to all the students. So, for example, I think you mentioned you went to the Cambridge Union and looked at debates, but also you started your own YouTube channel and started the students of not only students of Cambridge, but students of pages in 15 different countries that reached more than 2 million views in 6 months. So can you tell us more about that? Tell us about what inspired you to just get started with those social media pages and projects.
So in terms of YouTube, I remember when I got the offer from Cambridge, I went onto my laptop, went onto Facebook and searched in Students of Cambridge, expecting there to be a Humans of New York style blog. So for those who aren't familiar, Humans of New York is a blog created by Brandon Stanton. He's a photographer. He would approach people in New York City, introduce himself, say, hi, I'm creating this Facebook page where I take photos of strangers and I interview them about their lives. And then I take what I think is a really special part of that interview and condense it into a small paragraph. So we have a photo of you and a caption, which is something that you said. Can I take your photo? Brandon Stanton started that in New York, and it went crazy, millions and millions of followers. And I just naturally assumed that there would be something like that for Cambridge. I thought, what better way of really knowing the type of people who get there and who study there? Because at the time, I still was kind of convinced that everyone there was just the most intelligent person who lived in the library, and that was it. And so I remember typing it into Facebook, seeing it didn't exist, and thinking, right, when I get there, I'm going to settle in, and then I'm going to start that. And so that's what I did. I think I started 4 weeks after getting there. Took a couple of photos of people, really liked it. The post got some traction, started to get, a bit more strategic about how I was going to grow. It got really popular really quickly, and then spoke to a friend who was at Oxford, and I was like, let's do this, but for Oxford, you can run it, we can use the same branding. And then Durham, Bristol, Exeter, and a bunch of others. The most popular pages were Cambridge and Oxford, and there were definitely some learnings there for me in terms of why the other pages didn't work out as well, and why these pages worked out so well. But so that was the first kind of major extracurricular activity for me, and that was something that then shaped my kind of entire life at Cambridge, my social life, because I'd meet all of these amazing people randomly. And what I found was that every single person, regardless of who they are, regardless of what their experience is, there is something so unique and interesting to the masses about them. But for the vast majority of people, they don't think that's the case. So I would interview people and they would say, oh, I don't want to interview because I've got nothing interesting to say. And I'd say, okay, cool, let's just have a little chat. Where are you from? What do you do? What's on your mind? What are you stressing about? And I'd ask them lots of questions. And every single time without fail, there would be something of interest. And if, on the very odd occasion, there wasn't something that was really kind of impactful that came from that conversation, I realised it wasn't about them. It was about me as an interviewer, not asking the right questions or not creating the environment where they feel comfortable enough to share and to be vulnerable. So that was a wider, learning from the students of project.
It feels like you managed to get set up with a project that felt completely you. Like, you just say that you enjoy talking to people randomly, and that's exactly what you did with Students of. And then it's surely that whole experience completely shaped you for, the job that you're doing now and the company that you've created now. So I think it's amazing. And you can really see the link between your entrepreneurial spirit and the fact that being at this uni, being at, the sort of interesting uni that people want to know about with students that people want to know about, just allowed you to create this Joe Binder 2020 that we now know and is now super successful. So can you also tell us about your YouTube channel? Because I feel like that's how maybe Cleo and I started knowing of you. Apart from you being in the neighboring college, we just saw your videos and we were just like, oh, who is this guy?
Yeah, so that was a really interesting one. So I was in Berlin doing a 2-month internship. That was the final summer, and then I was, set to go back to Cambridge for my final year. And a bunch of different reasons, I ended up starting a YouTube channel and vlogging every day whilst I was doing the internship. And it was only once I got back to Cambridge that my channel started getting views. They were getting, up to maybe 100, 150 views per video. And then one of the videos was called My Final Year at Cambridge, and all of a sudden 4,000 people have seen it out of nowhere. And so I thought, okay, this is interesting. People must be curious about Cambridge. So then the next video was, again, something about Cambridge. And what I realised is everyone has an interest, well, lots of people have an interest in university, but also Cambridge. And if I were to show more of that side of me, rather than, hey, I'm doing an internship, and hey, this is what I think about this topic, that could probably get more engagement. So I did that. I made sure the focus of my YouTube channel was about university life, was about how I got into Cambridge, was about what a day in the life of a student looks like, where I literally kept the camera with me all day and just documented what that was like. That's when the views started to pick up. That's when we went from 4,000 views to, on the case of the specific day in the life video, over 250,000 views. So that's where the channel started to grow. And at the same time, that's where I learned more about editing and content creation, but also what makes engaging content, and then also how you package things online in a way that will allow more people to see it.
I think that also aligns with our motive behind doing these episodes as well, because people are interested in Oxbridge, but somehow there's still so much mystique around it, and people don't feel like they can really understand what it's like being there unless they are there. So similar to Students Of, we think that by having people share their stories and their experiences and being transparent about it, that's how you actually get real insights into university life. And I also find it super impressive that you were able to balance your academics and still do really well in that, but also have this personal journey that got you where you are today and do something completely different to the academic side of things, but that relates to your business now.
And at the end of the day, I feel like that's what university is about, and any university. I guess Cambridge and Oxford just gets you a seal of approval to people who you might encounter at work and in the most basic form, and then it's up to you and your personality to shine through. So yeah, I guess, do you know what's on average how much time you spent balancing doing all your social media projects, studying, and then sleeping? Because there must have been one that went away.
Yeah, really good question. I probably didn't sleep that much. Even now I have times at work where I'm on 5 hours sleep, and then I work so well the next day. I'm on a rocket ship. Everything is just going so quickly. I get through so much, and then the day after that I just completely crash. And there were definitely times at uni when it was like that. But it's hard to think about my actual kind of time allocation for each of those things. What I do know is that the work was stuff that I had to do. The academic work was stuff that I had to do. I didn't really skip lectures. I didn't skip any sessions. I didn't really skip handing in work. I just got that done. And then within that came Students Of, and my YouTube and my social, and those were always mixed together. And that became a problem on multiple occasions, because if you're seeing your friend for the first time in a week and he comes to see you and he's got a big camera, a vlog camera, and he wants to vlog the whole conversation, it's kind of just give me a break. Your YouTube followers don't need to hear about our conversation. And I definitely learned that the hard way, and had some difficulties with friendships there. And there were some instances where my friends, were just really honest, and they were like, you've got to stop doing this. You've also got to stop talking about your vlog the whole time, because I get it, it's exciting. You've got 10 new subscribers this week. Great. That's, I'm proud of you. But ultimately, I've got stuff that I'm excited about. There are things going on in my life, and I want to be able to share those things with you. And right now, I can't. I love when people are honest with me, even if it comes out in a really brutal way.
If we come back to Fitzwilliam College, could you first of all, describe FITS to someone who's just never been to Cambridge, has no clue what it is, what it looks like?
So if I had to describe Fitzwilliam College to somebody who'd never been there, I would say you'd walk in and you'd feel welcomed. You won't feel intimidated. You'd be greeted with a smile by the majority of people that you walk past. You would walk towards the centre of the college and see that there's a bar there and a cafe, and it's really welcoming. And everything to you, if you don't come from a super, super posh and privileged background, it will feel like home very quickly.
I have to say all the Hill colleges sort of give off that vibe. So Medwards, Fitz and Churchill are quite well connected, and the people there seem really friendly. I guess it's because we're not like the super posh central traditional colleges, so that might play into it. But yeah, that's nice to hear that the first thing you feel walking into Fitz is that you're welcome.
Yeah, and how would you say in what way is it different to the other 30 colleges there?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the main difference is just that it is welcoming and it's down to earth. The people there are down to earth. Whereas when I walked around other colleges, it felt very foreign to me, and quite out of my reach, to be honest. And I think a lot of that was because I'd seen those buildings on TV. I'd seen them in postcards and they were just so famous. And at that time, when I first got there to look around, I didn't really back myself as much as I do now. So I don't know, who knows, if I was applying to Cambridge now with my current mindset and, you know, my current experience, if that were a thing, then I may have not been guided by where I thought I would feel most at home, because I wouldn't be intimidated by the other colleges.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess you should apply where you want to end up at. And there's always the pool system. So, you know, if one of the central colleges can't have a place for you, but they think you are still capable of going to Cambridge, they will put your application into the pool system. And that's how me and Ob ended up at Medwards. So yeah, definitely don't be scared to apply to whatever college you want, and like don't overthink the statistics as well, because those change from year to year
so much. And so would you recommend FITS for anyone studying geography? I know that you said obviously it has a big geography community, and it may vary year on year, but did you feel like overall that was a good college to study it?
Yeah, definitely. It was nice. We had a whole group. We worked together a lot of the time, and, you know, people were always there, whether it was Fenella or Annabelle or Nikhil or Joseph, whoever it was, there were a bunch of us. So if ever I needed help or guidance or reassurance, they were there, and it was really nice. And for a lot of colleges, you know, there's a maximum of 2 geographers or 3 geographers, whereas at FITS there were 10 of us. So that was really great.
Yeah, it's really nice to have sort of a study group and be able to exchange notes. And if one of you doesn't understand a topic so well, you can sort of discuss it, generally have supervisions together as well. So, you know, you can walk from your college to your department or your lectures or whatever it might be. The only thing is fighting for books from the library if you're all having the same reading list. But other than that, sounds good. Maybe if you want to tell us a bit more about any tips you might have for students at Cambridge that want to increase their sort of engagement in social media, not just at Cambridge. I guess this is relevant to anyone who might want to do a similar project to you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good and interesting question, because what we've seen over the past couple of years is LinkedIn as a platform go from somewhere that students would never dare of engaging on to somewhere that people announce their dissertation results and people announce their first internships even when they're still at uni and things like that. So there is a massive opportunity for every student listening to this, everyone who's about to become a student, to start, quote, building their personal brand on a platform like LinkedIn. And what I mean by personal brand is your reputation. Every single person in the world has a reputation, but with the rise of social media, you no longer have to let your reputation be carved out for you by newspapers or other people speaking about you. You have the opportunity to create your own content, get people's attention, and with their attention, shape what they think of you and ultimately your reputation. So when people talk about personal brand, that's what they mean. They mean building your reputation in a way that can be scaled and shown to lots more people. And I think there's a huge opportunity, and I really stand by this, to every single person, particularly students and even soon-to-be students, to start posting content online, specifically on LinkedIn, because it's going to help you massively. And I'll give you a couple of examples of that. If you're looking for an internship and you create content around the fact that you've been looking, and maybe that you've applied and that you've been rejected, but you're not losing faith, that is interesting, and a lot of people are going to resonate with that. So what you'll find is one of your friends will like that piece of content, and then one of their friends will see that they've liked it. So you may not be connected with them, but ultimately you're going to have eyes on a piece of content that you've created that from somebody that you've never met before. And it's likely that someone will be able to resonate with that message. They'll think, you know what, I'm now 3 years into my career, but I remember applying to 80 internships. I didn't get one, and that felt awful. So that person then may be inclined to message you, and then you could start a professional relationship and start to network with that person. Now, that's just one example. There are countless examples. I've seen people post their CVs and how they got creative with their CVs online. And the first thing I've done is send them a message saying, hey, love a CV, here's my number, give me a ring anytime. I'm keen to chat about, where you're at with your work, and if you're considering joining another company, things like that. There's a huge opportunity for students to start doing that, and I would absolutely encourage people listening to start posting content about their life, about their interests, about their ambition on LinkedIn.
I love the way you speak about that, because you're sort of saying you have the power to shape your image. And yeah, it's great to sort of have that freedom of expressing yourself and then putting out there what you want people to see, basically.
And I find it, again, really inspiring how you've kind of taken the concept of networking, which is a concept that many of us see as very hazy. And if I think of networking, I think of big groups of people that are really intimidating to join.
Like more face to face.
Yeah, you've managed to changed it to an individual person speaking to you about their, ambitions. So yeah, I think it's really good how obviously LinkedIn would allow you to have those personal connection and personal networking opportunities.
Sorry, just to jump in on that, because I think that's a really interesting topic around networking. It is hazy. People don't know what networking really is. People assume that networking is going to a networking event and asking somebody what they do and thinking, how can this person help me? And then that's kind of it. It's so transactional. I would, if you think about networking in that way, bin that, throw it out the window right now, because that's just not what it is. If I were to ask every single person listening to this to close your eyes for 1 minute, and now think of somebody who you would ask for help from if you needed to create a logo. You may find that somebody comes to mind who creates logos. Or what if you needed a video edited? Who would you ask? Who would you message on Facebook that you know? What if you needed help with applying to a job at Google? Perhaps you know an older sibling's friend who used to work there. When you think about it like that, what you're doing is understanding that networking isn't about these transactional relationships. Networking is just about who you know and who is in your wider network. So, and all of those things, by the way, are from people that you know, right? So when we talk about personal branding and how it can help with your networking, all you're doing is allowing yourself to be known by other people for what you do. And so a great example of that is I was sat pre-COVID in a boardroom with a company, and there were 6 of us in the room. I was the only person there from my company because I was pitching and saying, hey, you should work with us. And eventually it got down to a point of, but why? What is the commercial value of us building our personal brands as individuals rather than creating social media content for the company's brand? Surely that would be better. And I said, okay, let's just be real. I am only in this room sitting and pitching in front of you because somebody else in this room has been following me on social media for the past 3 years and knew that when you guys had a meeting to say we need to up our marketing game, that person thought, oh, Joe Binder is going to be the guy to speak to. And then he called me in. And look at that. That is, the perfect example of how my personal brand has been valuable to me. I'm only here because, you know, this person knows that I do this kind of thing. And it came to his mind when he thought of, oh, we need a marketing person who should be cool. And that is what it is. And that basically, well, that kind of comment then got me in with that company, and we've now been working together and it's going really well. But that's you know, neither here nor there, if that's right saying. Ultimately, networking is huge and it's not transactional, and people should start seeing networking as just making more friends and letting more people know about what they do.
Yeah, and it's not just about being entrepreneurial, because obviously you are the definition of an entrepreneur, but even in more corporate environments, having a personal brand gets you more projects, gets you you know, opportunities or dinners and invitation, gets you a chat with a really important person. So yeah, I think that's a great advice to give to anyone.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was on LinkedIn or Instagram, but a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago, I remember I saw your post about when you were at university, reaching out to entrepreneurs or people who were doing similar things to you, and you know, you wanted to get more insight into that, and you were saying people often don't respond, and that you as a person now being in their position, you want to make those connections. And I was wondering for students or for anyone who wants to reach out to other people and create that network, what sort of advice would you give? Because it can't be a bit of an awkward conversation. Is it that you have to be friends first? How do you go about it?
So I think when you're reaching out to people, the most important thing to do is to make sure they know that you're reaching out to them specifically for a really specific purpose. Because even now, I'll get a message on Instagram saying, hey, please can you help me with my CV? And it just, you know, that exact message could have been sent to thousands of people. And then I'll get another message from somebody else saying, hey Joe, I've been following you for a while. I saw the video you did on X, or I feel like you'd be such a great person to ask for advice on my CV. Is there any chance I can send it over to you? Immediately, you know, I'm responding to that straight away and being like, yeah, sure, just send me a screenshot here or send it to me over an email. Because that feels like that person actually wants my help rather than just anyone's help. And that's what I find when I reach out to people. I never, ever, ever just send a blank message or a generic message saying, hey, what you're doing is cool. Can we chat? I always make it really specific. A lot more people get back to me when I reach out and ask them for help, which is something that I do really often.
And I wonder what tips you might give to the students that you're mentoring.
Yeah, so I think the most important part of mentoring for me is knowing that there's somebody there that you can go to for advice or for reassurance. My value to them isn't huge if we're, you know, just sitting there looking through a CV or a personal statement or anything like that. My value to them is where maybe they need an introduction to somebody, or maybe they need reassurance to, you know, back themselves and apply to Cambridge. That's a recent example of one of them. And now I'm in a position where I can say, do it, believe in yourself. There are different types of intelligence. You're smart enough. Essentially everything that Miss Rusi said to me, you know, all these years ago.
It's so important to have a mentor or a teacher, someone who really believes in you. And I have to say, we have seen that with previous interviewees as well, that it's so motivating when someone helps you through the process. But also, you know, if you're at a school where a teacher doesn't really believe in you, doesn't mean you cannot do it. So don't let them affect your decisions too much. Essentially, if you think you can do it, if you have the confidence, and if you know you've put in the work, just go for it, regardless of what other people might be telling you to do. But in general, it sounds like your Cambridge experience was just a massive learning experience as well, not just in terms of academics, but with your friends and with your social media as well, and about what career you wanted to do in the future. So I was just wondering if you have any tips for your past self, maybe? Any regrets, any major learning experiences?
I wouldn't say any regrets.
Good.
What I would say is that I've now realised that, well, two things. One is I'm not very happy when I'm not busy. And there have been a lot of times in my kind of career where I haven't been busy. And now what I do is I make sure that, you know, my calendar is full. If I'm going to feel like that, if I can see my calendar is going to be empty one week, I'm going to make an effort to fill that up, maybe with catch-ups with friends, maybe with kind of mentoring style chats with people who mentor me, and that helps me keep positive. And then the other part is that throughout uni, throughout work, throughout life, it is so normal for everyone to have highs and lows, and I get them fairly often. And what I've now realised is that when I'm in that low, even if I feel absolutely awful, I'm able to just know that this is like a bad hangover. There is nothing I can eat, there's nothing I can watch, there's no activity that I can do that is going to make me feel better when I'm in this low period. But I know that with time, it may be a day, it may be 2 days, it may even be a week, I will come out of that and it will be fine again. So when I do have a really low period, I've just got this kind of voice instruction in the back of my mind to just keep going one step after the next, because, you know, as long as I keep moving, I'm going to get through this low period. And that's something, and seeing it in a sense of like a hangover where there's no cure for it, it's just about time a lot of the time. That's been really helpful to me. So I would definitely pass on that advice to others.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And yeah, we hope to see you soon post-lockdown.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been wonderful. And if there is anybody listening thinking, oh, maybe I will apply to Cambridge or Oxford, if you're even giving it, you know, the tiniest of thoughts, and, you know, even if it's just slightly on your mind, 100% you have to do it. Otherwise, I'm telling you, and I promise you, that will be the one time that you've actually regretted something in life. And you will always think back to that moment and think, I wish I would have done that. So you've just got to do it. Do it for your current self, but also do it for your future self. And thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please do like, subscribe, and share it to help other people find it.